Healing the Invisible Wounds. Overcoming Childhood Emotional Neglect, written and published by Spoken Quora. Introduction. The wounds you cannot see. Have you ever felt empty, disconnected, or like something is missing, but you can't quite put your finger on it? Maybe you struggle to express your emotions, feel unworthy of love, or find it hard to connect with others. If so, you might be carrying the invisible scars of childhood emotional neglect, a wound not caused by what was done to you, but by what was missing. Unlike physical or verbal abuse, emotional neglect is silent. No harsh words, no visible bruises, just a persistent lack of emotional support, validation, and love. It leaves you feeling unseen, unheard, and unimportant. And the worst part? You may not even realize it happened to you. But here's the good news. Healing is possible. This book is your guide to understanding what you went through, how it shaped you, and, most importantly, how to reclaim your emotions, rebuild self-worth, and finally feel whole. Your past does not define you. Your healing begins now. Chapter 1. Understanding Childhood Emotional Neglect. Childhood emotional neglect is not something that happens to you. It's something that should have happened, but didn't. Unlike physical abuse or overt trauma, emotional neglect is the absence of emotional support, validation, and nurturing during your formative years. Imagine growing up in a home where your physical needs were met. You had food, clothing, and shelter, but your emotions were ignored. When you were sad, no one comforted you. When you were excited, no one shared in your joy. When you needed guidance, you were left to figure things out on your own. Over time, this teaches you a dangerous lesson. Your feelings don't matter. Because emotional neglect is what wasn't there, it's often hard to recognize. Many people who experienced it don't even realize anything was wrong. There were no bruises, no yelling, no dramatic incidents, just a quiet, persistent emptiness. But the effects are profound. As an adult, you might struggle with emotional numbness, feeling disconnected from your emotions, as if life is happening around you but not within you. Low self-worth, feeling like you're never good enough, even when you achieve success. Difficulty asking for help, believing you must handle everything alone because that's what you learned as a child. Struggles with relationships, either feeling emotionally distant or overly dependent on others for validation. Chronic guilt or shame, feeling like a burden or struggling with self-criticism. CN is rarely caused by intentionally cruel parents. In many cases, parents are loving but emotionally unavailable due to their own struggles. Here are some common causes. Parents who were emotionally neglected themselves. They never learned how to provide emotional support because they didn't receive it either. Growing up in a household with mental illness, addiction, or high stress, parents may have been too overwhelmed to focus on your emotional needs. A culture of emotional suppression. Some families believe expressing emotions is a sign of weakness, so children learn to suppress their feelings. The good child syndrome. If you were praised for being independent and not causing trouble, you may have learned that showing emotions was unacceptable. Many adults who experienced emotional neglect don't realize it until they start noticing patterns in their own behavior. Ask yourself, do I struggle to name and express my emotions? Do I feel emotionally distant from others, even those close to me? Do I avoid conflict at all costs, even when I'm being mistreated? Do I minimize my own pain, telling myself it wasn't that bad? Do I feel like I have to be self-sufficient and can't rely on anyone? If you answered yes to many of these, you may have experienced childhood emotional neglect. But recognizing it is the first step toward healing. You cannot heal what you don't acknowledge. Understanding that your struggles are not personal failures, but rather the result of unmet emotional needs, helps you break free from self-blame. You deserve to be heard, validated, and emotionally nurtured. And while you can't change the past, you can start healing now. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to acknowledge and accept your past without guilt and how to begin giving yourself the emotional care you never received. Your healing journey starts here. Chapter 2. Breaking the silence. Acknowledging and accepting your past. Childhood emotional neglect is often hard to recognize, and even harder to accept. Unlike physical abuse or trauma, there are no visible scars, no clear memories of dramatic events. Instead, there's a quiet, persistent feeling of emptiness, one that whispers, "Something is missing, but I don't know what." For years, you may have dismissed your feelings, convincing yourself that your childhood was fine. Maybe you had food, a home, and parents who worked hard to provide for you. Maybe they even told you they loved you. So why, as an adult, do you feel so disconnected, so unworthy, so emotionally distant? The truth is, you are missing something essential: emotional validation and support. And that absence, though invisible, left a deep wound. But now, it's time to stop minimizing your pain. It's time to acknowledge what happened, accept its impact, and begin your healing journey. Before you can fully heal, you must first acknowledge that something was wrong. This isn't about blaming your parents. It's about understanding your experiences so you can move forward. Ask yourself these questions. Did my parents respond to my emotions with empathy, or did they dismiss them? While I was upset, was I comforted or told to get over it? Did I feel like my feelings mattered in my household? Do I now struggle to express my emotions, even to myself? Do I minimize my pain, telling myself it wasn't that bad? Do I feel disconnected from myself or others? If you answered yes to many of these, it's likely that you experienced emotional neglect. And recognizing this isn't about self-pity, it's about self-awareness. One of the hardest parts of healing from childhood emotional neglect is letting go of guilt. You might hear a voice in your head saying, "My parents did their best. I shouldn't feel this way. Other people had it worse than me. Why am I complaining? I should just move on." But healing doesn't mean you have to paint your parents as villains. You can acknowledge their limitations while also acknowledging your pain. Many parents who emotionally neglect their children don't do so out of malice. They may have been emotionally neglected themselves, struggling with their own wounds. But understanding their struggles does not erase the impact on you. You have the right to feel what you feel. You have the right to recognize that your needs weren't met. And most importantly, you have the right to heal. As a child, you may have been taught that your emotions were inconvenient, dramatic, or unimportant. Now, as an adult, you may struggle to even recognize your own feelings. One of the most powerful steps in healing is learning to validate your emotions. Instead of suppressing or dismissing them, start by acknowledging them. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," say, "It's okay that I feel this way." Instead of saying, "I'm overreacting," say, "My emotions are valid and they deserve space." Instead of saying, "I don't know why I feel this way," say, "I want to understand myself better." Your emotions are not wrong. They are signals guiding you toward what needs attention and healing. For years, you may have kept your emotions locked away, afraid to confront them. But healing requires expression. Here are a few ways to begin releasing and processing your pain. Journaling. Writing down your thoughts and feelings can be incredibly healing. Try these prompts. What emotions do I struggle to express? What would I say to my younger self who felt unseen and unheard? What do I wish I had received emotionally as a child? Talking about your past. Breaking the silence means speaking your truth, whether to a trusted friend, therapist, or even just yourself. Saying the words, "I was emotionally neglected," out loud can be a powerful moment of validation. Releasing suppressed emotions. Sometimes, years of unacknowledged emotions manifest as anxiety, depression, or even physical symptoms. Healing involves letting yourself feel. If you need to cry, cry. If you feel anger, allow yourself to acknowledge it. If you feel numb, gently explore what's beneath the surface. You don't have to unpack everything at once. Healing happens one small step at a time. Acknowledging your past is essential, but you are not your past. Yes, you were emotionally neglected. Yes, it shaped parts of who you are today. But it does not have to control your future. Healing means reclaiming your emotions, your voice, and your self-worth. It means learning that you deserve love, connection, and emotional fulfillment. And most importantly, it means realizing that the little child inside you, the one who felt unseen and unheard, is still there, waiting to be nurtured and healed. You have the power to give yourself what you never received. What's next? Now that you've acknowledged and accepted your past, it's time to take the next step, learning how to reconnect with your emotions and begin the process of self-healing. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to reparent yourself, how to nurture and validate the inner child who has been waiting for your love all along. You're not broken. You are healing, and this journey is just beginning. Chapter 3: Reconnecting with your inner child, healing through self-compassion. Deep within you, there exists a child, a part of you that never truly disappeared. This child carries the emotions, fears, and unmet needs from your past. It is the version of you who once sought love, attention, and validation, but was instead ignored, dismissed, or misunderstood. For many people who have experienced childhood emotional neglect, reconnecting with this inner child can feel uncomfortable. You may have spent years suppressing emotions, distancing yourself from your past, and convincing yourself that those early experiences didn't affect you. But healing cannot happen without acknowledging and embracing this lost part of yourself. Reconnecting with your inner child is not about dwelling on the past. It's about learning to nurture yourself in the way you always deserved. Your inner child is the part of you that holds your early memories, emotions, and perceptions of the world. This child remembers how it felt to be ignored or unseen, holds on to pain, fear, and self-doubt, still longs for the love and validation it never received. If you grew up feeling emotionally neglected, your inner child may have developed certain beliefs. My feelings don't matter. I'm not lovable. I have to take care of myself because no one else will. These beliefs don't just fade with age. They shape how you interact with others, how you handle emotions, and how you see yourself. But the good news is, they can be rewritten. Many adults who experienced emotional neglect don't even realize how much their inner child is still influencing them. Here are some signs that you may be disconnected from your inner child. You struggle with self-compassion. You find it easier to be kind to others, but criticize yourself harshly. You suppress emotions. Instead of feeling sadness, anger, or fear, you push them away or numb yourself. You feel unworthy of love and attention. Even when people care for you, you secretly feel like you don't deserve it. You have difficulty trusting others. Emotional neglect can make it hard to believe that people will truly be there for you. You avoid vulnerability. Expressing your needs and emotions feels unsafe, so you keep them hidden. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward healing. Since your emotional needs weren't met in childhood, it's up to you to give yourself now what you didn't receive then. This process is called reparenting, learning to care for yourself in the way a loving, supportive parent would. Talk to your inner child. This may feel strange at first, but visualizing and speaking to your inner child can be incredibly healing. Find a quiet place and close your eyes. Imagine yourself as a small child. See them standing in front of you. What do they look like? What emotions do they carry? Gently say to them, "Oh, I see you. I hear you. You are not alone. Oh, your feelings matter. You are worthy of love. Oh, I will take care of you now." Your inner child needs to feel seen, heard, and safe. This simple practice can begin to rebuild the emotional connection you lost. Practice self-compassion. If you struggle with self-criticism, it's likely that your inner child still fears rejection. Start replacing harsh self-talk with kindness. Instead of saying, "I'm so stupid for feeling this way," say, "It's okay to feel this way. My emotions are valid." Instead of saying, "I should be stronger," say, "I'm doing my best and that's enough. Imagine how you would speak to a child who was hurt or scared. Now, speak to yourself the same way. Do activities that nurture your inner child. One of the most powerful ways to reconnect with your inner child is to engage in activities that bring joy, creativity, and playfulness into your life. Draw, paint, or color. Let go of perfection and just create. Or listen to music from your childhood. Feel the emotions it brings up. Spend time in nature. Let yourself be curious and explore. Watch childhood movies or read old books. Comfort your inner child with nostalgia. Write a letter to your younger self. Tell them what they needed to hear. These small acts remind your inner child that they are still worthy of joy and care. For a child to thrive, they need to feel safe. If you grew up emotionally neglected, your brain may have learned that emotions are dangerous or unimportant. Now, it's time to create an emotional space where you feel safe to express yourself. Set boundaries. Protect your energy from people who dismiss or invalidate your feelings. Allow yourself to cry. If emotions arise, let them flow without judgment. Seek support. Talk to a therapist or trusted friend who understands your journey. The more you create a sense of emotional safety, the more your inner child will trust you. Healing is not about being perfect, it's about progress. As you reconnect with your inner child, you may feel guilt for how you've treated yourself in the past. You might wish you had realized all of this sooner. But here's the truth. You were doing the best you could with what you knew at the time. Forgive yourself for the years spent disconnected from your emotions. Forgive yourself for the ways you tried to cope. Forgive yourself for not knowing how to heal sooner. Your inner child doesn't need you to be perfect. They just need you to show up again and again with kindness, patience, and love. Reconnecting with your inner child is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong relationship. Every time you choose self-compassion, every time you validate your emotions, every time you nurture yourself, you are healing. You are no longer that abandoned child. You are now the loving, caring presence that your inner child always needed. And as you continue this journey, you'll realize that the love you've been searching for has always been within you. In the next chapter, we will explore how to build healthier emotional connections with others, starting with yourself. Chapter 4. Building emotional awareness. Learning to feel again. Imagine you've spent years in a foreign country where no one speaks your language. Over time, you stop using it too. Then, one day you're asked to speak it again, but the words don't come easily. This is what it feels like for people who've experienced childhood emotional neglect, CEN, when they try to reconnect with their emotions. After years of pushing feelings aside, ignoring discomfort, or numbing emotions, feeling again can feel strange, overwhelming, or even unsafe. But here's the truth. Your emotions were never the problem. The problem was that no one taught you how to process them. Emotions are not weaknesses. They are signals, guiding you toward what matters, what hurts, and what needs attention. Learning to feel again is not about drowning in emotions. It's about understanding them, embracing them, and using them to heal. When you've spent years avoiding emotions, you may not even realize you're disconnected from them. Emotional numbness is a defense mechanism your mind developed to protect you from pain. Signs you may be emotionally disconnected. You feel empty or numb rather than sad or upset. You struggle to name or describe your emotions. You avoid deep conversations about feelings. You use distractions, work, social media, food, alcohol to avoid discomfort. You get overwhelmed when others express emotions. You feel uncomfortable with vulnerability. If any of these resonate with you, know that you are not broken. You have simply adapted to survive without emotional awareness. And now, you are learning to change that. Before you can fully reconnect with your emotions, you need to understand what they're trying to tell you. Every emotion has a purpose. Sadness tells you that you've lost something important. It invites you to grieve and process. Anger signals that something is unfair or harmful. It pushes you to set boundaries. Fear warns you of potential danger. It helps you prepare or protect yourself. Joy shows you what brings you happiness. It reminds you of what's meaningful. Guilt highlights when you've acted against your values. It encourages growth. When you ignore emotions, you silence an important part of yourself. But when you start listening, you gain self-awareness, strength, and clarity. For many people who experienced emotional neglect, feelings can feel like a blur, just a vague sense of discomfort. The key to building emotional awareness is learning to identify and name your emotions. Use the emotion wheel. If you struggle to name what you're feeling, use an emotion wheel, a tool that lists core emotions: anger, sadness, joy, fear, and their variations: frustration, grief, excitement, anxiety. Looking at a chart like this can help you pinpoint emotions with more accuracy. Tune into your body's signals. Your body often knows what you're feeling before your mind does. Pay attention to tightness in your chest, anxiety or sadness; a clenched jaw or fists, anger; a sinking feeling in your stomach, fear or guilt. By reconnecting with these physical sensations, you can learn to trust your emotions again. Once you start recognizing emotions, the next step is learning how to express them. Many people who grew up with emotional neglect fear that showing emotions will lead to judgment, rejection, or conflict. But expressing emotions isn't about being dramatic. It's about being honest with yourself and others. Here are some ways to express emotions in a healthy way. Speak it out loud. If it feels safe, try saying, "I'm feeling really overwhelmed today. I need some time to process my emotions." I feel hurt when you dismiss my feelings. The more you practice verbalizing emotions, the more natural it will become. Write down. Journaling is a powerful tool for emotional expression. If speaking feels difficult, write down, "Right now, I think this emotion is connected to what I need in this moment is." Use creative outlets. Paint, draw, or make music to express emotions non-verbally. Move your body, dance, run, or do yoga to release stored emotions. Allow yourself to cry. If you've suppressed emotions for years, crying might feel unfamiliar or even shameful. But crying is a natural way for your body to release emotional tension. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of healing. One of the biggest barriers to emotional awareness is fear of emotions. If you grew up in an environment where emotions were dismissed or punished, your brain may see them as dangerous. Now, it's time to rewrite that belief. Remind yourself, emotions are not your enemy. Tell yourself, "It is safe for me to feel." Create a space where you can feel emotions without judgment. Surround yourself with emotionally supportive people. The more you show yourself that emotions are safe and valid, the easier it will be to experience them fully. Relearning how to feel is a journey, one that takes time, patience, and self-compassion. But as you build emotional awareness, you'll notice incredible changes. You'll feel more connected to yourself. You'll understand your needs and desires better. You'll form deeper, more authentic relationships. You'll release the emotional burdens you've carried for years. Most importantly, you'll no longer live in emotional survival mode. You will feel fully, live fully, and love fully. In the next chapter, we will explore how to build healthy emotional connections with others without fear, guilt, or self-doubt. Chapter 5. Creating a new path, healthy relationships and boundaries. For those who have experienced childhood emotional neglect, relationships can feel complicated, confusing, or even exhausting. You might struggle to trust others, fear vulnerability, or feel emotionally disconnected from people who care about you. When your emotional needs were ignored as a child, you likely developed coping mechanisms to protect yourself, avoiding deep connections, pleasing others at your own expense, or shutting down emotions altogether. But here's the truth. You deserve healthy, fulfilling relationships. You are worthy of love, respect, and emotional safety. This chapter will guide you through rebuilding your relationships and setting healthy boundaries so you can create a new path, one that leads to genuine, meaningful connections. Your childhood experiences shape how you relate to others as an adult. If your emotional needs weren't met, you might unconsciously carry unhealthy relationship patterns into adulthood. Common patterns among those who experience CN include people-pleasing, saying yes when you want to say no, over-apologizing or prioritizing others' needs over your own. Fear of vulnerability, struggling to express emotions, avoiding deep conversations, or keeping people at a distance. Emotional detachment, feeling disconnected, struggling to form deep bonds, or believing that relationships aren't important. Overdependence, relying on others to give you a sense of self-worth or identity. Difficulty setting boundaries, feeling guilty for saying no, letting others take advantage of you, or feeling responsible for others' happiness. The first step in creating healthy relationships is to recognize these patterns so you can start shifting them. Reflection exercise. Think about your past and current relationships. Do any of the above patterns show up? How did your childhood shape the way you connect with others? What would a healthy relationship look like for you? Healing from emotional neglect means relearning what a healthy relationship looks and feels like. A healthy relationship is based on mutual respect, open and honest communication, emotional support and understanding, boundaries that protect your well-being, a sense of safety and trust. Here's how to start cultivating better relationships. Choose emotionally safe people. Not everyone deserves access to your emotions. Look for relationships with people who listen to you without judgment, respect your feelings and boundaries, support your growth and healing, make you feel safe expressing yourself. Let go of toxic relationships that make you feel drained, unworthy, or invisible. Learn to express your needs. Many people who experience, see, and grow up believing their needs are unimportant or too much for others. This leads to suppressing emotions and suffering in silence. But your needs matter. They always have. Practice saying, "I need some time to recharge. I would appreciate more support with this. I feel uncomfortable when you ignore my feelings." At first, expressing needs may feel selfish or scary, but with practice, it will become second nature. Embrace vulnerability gradually. If you're used to keeping people at a distance, opening up might feel terrifying. But emotional closeness is built through sharing, trust, and honesty. Start small. Share a personal thought or feeling with someone you trust. Allow yourself to accept help or comfort from others. Remind yourself that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. Vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing or exposing yourself to unsafe people. It means allowing yourself to be real, authentic, and seen. If emotional neglect taught you to suppress your feelings, you may have difficulty setting boundaries or even recognizing when they are needed. A boundary is simply a line that protects your emotional well-being. It defines what is okay and what is not okay in your relationships. Without boundaries, you may feel drained or resentful. Others may take advantage of you. Your emotions and needs may go unrecognized. With boundaries, you protect your peace and energy. Your relationships become more balanced and respectful. You feel more in control of your emotional well-being. Identify where you need boundaries. Ask yourself, who or what drains my energy? When do I feel uncomfortable in relationships? In what situations do I say yes when I want to say no? Common areas where boundaries are needed. Emotional boundaries, protecting your feelings and mental health. Time boundaries, not overcommitting or allowing people to waste your time. Physical boundaries, respecting personal space and physical comfort. Communication boundaries, limiting toxic or disrespectful conversations. Communicate boundaries clearly. You don't need to justify or over-explain your boundaries. Keep it simple. I can't take on extra work right now. I need some time alone today. I don't feel comfortable discussing this. Some people may resist your boundaries, especially if they're used to you prioritizing them over yourself. But stand firm. A person who respects you will respect your boundaries. Enforce boundaries without guilt. If someone ignores, pushes, or disrespects your boundaries, remind them firmly. I already said I'm not available for this. I need you to respect my space. You have the right to walk away from people who do not respect your limits. Reminder, setting boundaries isn't about controlling others. It's about protecting yourself. Healing from emotional neglect means breaking old patterns, building emotional connections, and protecting your energy. At first, these changes might feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is a sign of growth. As you create healthier relationships, you'll start noticing powerful shifts. You'll feel valued and respected in your connections. You'll experience less stress and emotional exhaustion. You'll trust yourself to express needs without guilt. You'll attract relationships that support your healing. Most importantly, you'll no longer settle for relationships that drain you. You will choose relationships that uplift, nourish, and heal you. Conclusion: your healing journey starts now. Healing from childhood emotional neglect is not an overnight process. It's a journey of self-discovery, growth, and reclaiming the love and care you always deserved. By understanding your past, embracing self-compassion, and setting healthy boundaries, you're taking the first steps toward a more fulfilling life. Now, I want to hear from you. What's one boundary you wish you had set earlier in life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful insights on healing, personal growth, and emotional well-being. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your journey to self-healing starts here.